This is the 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 20.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And I want to thank you for coming to the 18 Strong Podcast for what is now the 20th episode and the first episode of the year 2015. So happy New Year's to everybody. We took a short little break last week for the holiday, and I'm ready to get things ramped back up. And we've got a ton of incredible things coming up for the year 2015. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different than the ones of past, because this one is just going to be me and a microphone, basically just kind of highlighting and talking about some of the biggest misconceptions that I've found and heard and seen regarding the golf fitness program, and some of the lessons that I learned just, throughout my experience and through my experience interviewing and talking to some of these great people that I've had on the show and the people I've had the pleasure and opportunity to hang out with and talk to in the golf fitness world in years past, and especially this past year, the year 2014, when I started 18 Strong, the podcast and the website. I've really had the opportunity to meet some great people and learn a ton. So for those of you that don't know, basically my background story, I started out, got my degree in physical therapy from a small school, Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. Graduated back in the year 2002 and worked in the clinical setting for several years. Switched over kind of out of luck, out of chance, and got into the golf fitness world. And so since the year 2008 or so, I've really been kind of diving into the golf world and learning a ton about, I grew up or started out with more of the, as I mentioned, the physical therapy background, the rehab background. And so getting into the strength and conditioning world is definitely a learning curve. And, sometimes myself as a therapist, I came in with some preconceived notions that I maybe knew a little bit more than the general strength training coach. And so, kind of was on a little bit of a high horse and realized, holy crap, I don't know nearly as much as I should or think I did. And so the past several years have all been very much a learning curve, and which I encourage all of you to continue to do, because when you stop learning, that's when we start to lose any progress in whatever our passion is. And so, these past couple of years, months have all been very eye-opening, and I continue to try to learn from the best and then pass that information on to all of you. And so I've been very fortunate to team up with my business partner, John Benny, or most people call him Crash, who worked in the strength and conditioning world with the St. Louis Blues and is very much known for his work in the hockey world. And have learned a ton from him, and then some of the other people that I've gotten around here in the St. Louis area, working with some of the medical professionals and people that I do, but then also getting out and meeting some of these people, both nationally and internationally known in the golf fitness world. So that's kind of the idea of the 18 Strong Podcast. But before I get into some of that stuff, I just want to quickly take a moment to first thank you guys for everything that you've done, all the feedback I've gotten on 18 Strong over the past several months since we launched in September of 2014. And just want to go over a few of the highlights that have really kind of blown me away since we got this thing started. We've had almost 6,000 downloads of the 18 Strong Podcast, which to anybody that knows anything about podcasts, that may not seem like a ton, because I know of podcasts that are getting hundreds of thousands of downloads a month. So, but to me, it's incredible that 6,000 people, or there have been 6,000 downloads of this podcast, something that I just kind of decided to start on a whim. And even more mind-blowing is it's been downloaded in at least 39 different countries, which is amazing to me. So I want to thank all of you guys for the feedback, the reviews. Please keep it coming. I really enjoy. I read every single one of them and take them to heart. I really, want to improve the website and the podcast so it brings the best information for all of you. And then just the ability to be able to interview some of the people that I have, some people that I really look up to in the golf and fitness world, some people that I may not have known much about prior to, talking to them and getting to know them, and really developing some friendships with these people and continually learning from them and the connections that they have, and hopefully then progressing and bringing either them back on for a future recap and then some of their connections, bringing them onto the podcast as well. So thank you to everybody that's been involved. And then just some big things coming for the year 2015. So I've been getting a lot of questions on, just general fitness questions. Which we're gonna touch some things today in today's episode. But a lot of people ask for the biggest question, how do you hit a ball further? And there's tons and tons of ways to work in the gym and work on your swing and things like that. So I actually put together a quick little ebook that I want to give to you guys as a big thank you for everything that you've done for me. So it's called 5 yards in less than 5 minutes, and it's a way to just add a little bit of yardage to your drive, add a little power to your swing, in some very quick exercises that you can do, minimal time. Like I said, in 5 minutes, and maybe once, twice a week will make a huge difference. So you can go ahead and go to 18strong.com. You'll see on the top right-hand side of the page, I think it says get your free book or get your free ebook, and it's got a picture of the cover of the book. Or you can go directly to 18strong.com/5, and that's the number 5, 18strong.com/5yardsbook. And you'll go there. It's going to ask you, if you want to get your free book, just click the button. It does ask for your email address, which will put you on our newsletter list. I want to be fully upright with that. But basically, that email is simply going to give you some of the most pertinent content that we put out at 18strong.com. We're not going to blast your email address all the time. You might get one email a week with some new things that we're coming out with. So, but by all means, I wanted to thank you guys, put out that ebook for you, and enjoy it. Give me some feedback, and hopefully we'll have a lot more things like that coming in the future as well. We do have some new authors that are coming on the 18 Strong site in the near future. We've had a couple articles. We had one from Adam Stevenson, who was in our most recent episode of the 18 Strong podcast. We had one from a good friend of mine and a phenomenal golfer here in St. Louis. He's I think a 10-time club champion at one of the most prominent courses here in town. And he's a good buddy of mine, Andy Frost, giving more of the golfer's perspective, the side, from the guys that are actually out there grinding and playing, and not necessarily from the pro level, but from a very, very high amateur level. Andy's been one of the top amateurs in St. Louis for a long time, and he's had a great story, and we've had a great past working together. And then just something for the local listeners, anybody here in St. Louis or anybody in the surrounding area. We have a very special thing coming to St. Louis, tied in with the guys from Winchester Spine and Sport, Dr. Austin Panter and Dr. Brett Winchester. They have been talking to Dr. Brett McCabe, who you may recognize from, I think it was episode 3 of the 18 Strong podcast. And Dr. McCabe is going to be coming to St. Louis for a 2-day seminar on basically the mental game, both for specifically for just any sport, and then specifically for the golf game, for the golfer. It's going to be a 2-day seminar that's coming to St. Louis, and most likely is going to be held at our facility at Elevated Performance. So if you want any more information on that, get a hold of me at Jeff Pellizzero on Twitter, or feel free to email me at jeff@18strong.com. And then the last little piece before we get into the bones of today, and I apologize for rambling on here, but it's been such a great 2014. I'm looking forward to 2015. I've been working, and I think I've mentioned this on a couple of other podcasts. I've been working on a book for the past several months, and so in the next, I'm going to say by March 1st for sure, my book will be available either on Amazon or on the 18strong.com website. And it's going to be called The Guide to a Bogey-Proof Workout. And it's basically going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes to avoid in your golf fitness program, and some of the things, again, that I've learned over the years and that I see people misconstruing or doing improperly in their workouts, or a lot of the questions that I get, I wanted to address those basically so you guys have something that you can take and read and pretty much get as much knowledge as I have in my head. So I look forward to sharing that with you guys, and I will definitely keep you posted as to when that is all coming out and how you can get it and all that good stuff. So moving on, let's get into the bones of today's discussion, which is the misconceptions of a golfer's fitness program. And some of the biggest lessons that I've learned over the past several months, especially working with some of these top professionals and coaches. And one of the biggest things that people come in to our facility and come in any medical professional, golf fitness professional, what they ask about is their flexibility. And, how can I get more flexible? How can I get more turn? And so I wanted to address the fact that in many situations, people don't necessarily understand flexibility, or as I like to call it, and you'll hear a lot of the people in the golf world describe two different terms, mobility and stability, where mobility means, your ability to move or a joint's range of motion, and every joint has a specified range of motion that it should go through. But then there's also this term of stability, where a joint needs to be able to be stable and hold itself. And in the golf swing, there are definitely different parts of our body that we want to be stable and parts that we want to be mobile. For instance, like our hips need to be mobile as we're rotating through. Our knee needs to be a little bit more stable. So when people come into the gym and they tell me they need to be able to turn more and all they want to do is stretch, sometimes that's not necessarily the case. And so I want you all to be aware of the fact that stretching is not always the answer. I've heard many golfers, all they talk about is getting more flexible, getting more flexibility, stretching out more so they can get a bigger turn. In some situations, it's that tightness in your body that is actually protecting you. So think of it this way. If you are making a joint, or if you have a joint that is not wanting to go the full range of motion, it may be because there's something wrong going on. It may be because it's going to be painful, so your body is naturally tightening up. So if you go in and you just try to loosen that up, you may be opening yourself up for something bigger, some kind of an injury. And so you really have to be aware of, why is the body tight, or what areas are tight, what areas should be moving and what shouldn't be moving in your rotation and in your swing. And then, how can you attack that? Is stretching your best course of action, or is it better for you to be doing some other stabilization exercises? And I know you're probably saying, okay, Jeff, well, how do I do that? How do I go about figuring that kind of stuff out? I hate to tell you, but my best answer is to go and get evaluated by somebody, because that's going to be the best way for somebody to pinpoint what your specific needs are. I can tell you offhand, the areas that I see that typically need some mobility work are the hips. Many times I find that golfers, they can't rotate their hips far enough in order to get through their shot. And the upper back and the thoracic region is usually a little more difficult to get moving, and so any lack of rotation is often related to the thoracic region not moving very well. And yes, while there are some stretches that can be used, some of the lying down, we call them open books, where you're lying on your side and kind of arms out in front of you, rotating your top arm over to the floor and over to the other side, trying to pull your shoulder back towards the floor. It's a great exercise, and it works a little bit of the stability and the mobility side. But again, I would much rather prefer you go and see somebody, even if it's just a one-time deal, to go get yourself assessed and then figure out some of those things and get a couple exercises. That would be my key. Now, I wanted to get a little bit into the different types of stretching as well, because most of us do some sort of stretching. We have some sort of program. We've maybe seen a professional. But I tend to see golfers doing a lot of stretching on the tee box, and it's not necessarily the ideal time to be stretching out. So there's two different types of stretching that I would kind of generalize. Dynamic stretching, which is you want to think more of as like a warm-up, moving your body through motions that you're going to be performing on the golf course, or just kind of getting all those joints and different body parts limber and loose. And that's a little bit more of just moving through the range of motion for a brief periods of time. This may be like a walking lunge. This could be just doing some light, slow body weight squats. This could be reaching down to touch your toes, but not going down and holding yourself for a long period of time. Anytime you're holding yourself for long periods of time, that's what we would call more of a static stretch. And a static stretch is going to help elongate the muscles. If you have some tight muscles, it's going to help stretch them out. And I like to visualize a piece of cold taffy. And as you pull on the muscles and you hold it for a long period of time, it's like pulling and holding that piece of taffy. And slowly you're going to start to feel that those muscles relax and start to stretch. But the problem is that's not what you want your muscles to be like before you go out and you want to hit a 300-yard drive. When you're going to hit a 300-yard drive, you want your muscles to be explosive and powerful. And that long, slow, stretching taffy is not conducive to a strong, powerful move. So the idea is utilize your dynamic stretching prior to your workouts, prior to your golf game, prior to any kind of physical or athletic activity, because it's gonna wake the muscles up a little bit. It's gonna kind of activate them. It's going to take you through your ranges of motion so you are a little more limber, you are a little more loose. It's not like just jumping out of the car and getting on the tee box. But at the same time, you're not letting those muscles just kind of relax and get slow. The static stretching is great to do after a workout. It's great to, like before you go to bed, do some soft tissue stuff. Maybe you're using a foam roller or that type of stuff, and then do some stretching. And that's good to help elongate the muscles, but it's not necessarily great for a competitive advantage. So I want you to be clear on that. So again, stretch out after your round, after your workout, but before a workout, before you get into a competitive game of golf, you want to do more of the dynamic stuff and just kind of prime your body. Don't stretch it out a whole lot. And then flexibility is also, in my mind, this is where your corrective exercises fall into play. And, so some of these stretches, really, I find people do stretches just because they've always done stretches. Hamstring stretches, the old back rotation stretches. You see the guy who props his leg up on the bench or on the golf cart just because that's the only stretch that he knows how to do. When you're thinking mobility and flexibility exercises, you want to make sure that they're targeted. Again, they're targeted for what are your limitations. There has to be a reason why you're doing these things. And so if you've been stretching for 15 years and you still have tight hamstrings, I think that gives you an inclination that maybe something needs to change. Maybe you need to get looked at by a professional and figure out, okay, why are my hamstrings still tight? Why is this still bothering me? Is it really my hamstrings that are the issue? Or in many cases, what we find in the medical field is if you got chronically tight hamstrings, it's because something else is going wrong. And if those hamstrings weren't tight, something's going to get hurt or something's going to get injured. So that tight hamstring is basically like a protective measure to keep you from injuring yourself and making things worse. So always remember that there's got to be a reason for why you're doing the stretches, why you're doing these different things. For instance, a great example is I find that people have a hard time squatting. Many people that we screen have a difficult time getting into a full squat that would actually, what I consider, pass my test. And many people, it's because their ankle range of motion is very limited. So a quick little test that you could do, just to give you something practical here, would be in like a half kneeling position. Get right in front of a wall. Put your, say your left foot, and we're going to test your left ankle. Put your left foot, the sole of your foot, flat on the ground. You're going to be on your right knee, and you want your left toes, the big toe of your left foot, about 5 inches from the wall. And see if you can lean forward, and I'll put something in the show notes with either a video of this test or a description of this test. But lean forward and see if you can touch your knee to the wall without your heel coming off the floor. And this is a very general test. This is one of the things that we do with the TPI screen. But if you can't touch the wall with your knee without contorting your body or without your heel coming up, then that tells me that you've got some limitation in your ankle. I don't know exactly what the limitation is. Is it your calves? Is it your joint? We don't know, but that just tells me that there's a limitation there, and that's going to restrict your ability to squat. So if you're doing a bunch of heavy squats and things like that, loading your back with a bunch of weight, and you're doing back-loaded squats, chances are you're going to do something wrong because your motion already is screwed up. It's kind of jacked up because your ankle's not moving, so we know that something else is compensating. So your flexibility, your mobility, your stability, your corrective exercises all need to be geared towards fixing these things. We got to move properly first, and then you can jump into that other stuff. But that's where the flexibility and mobility exercises should really come into play. All right. Lesson number 2, or misconception number 2 that I want to talk about, and it's very prevalent with the golf population, pretty much, especially this time of year, January. It's the time of resolutions. We all want to talk about fat loss. And, this is something very near and dear to my heart. I'm a 36-year-old male, former soccer player, former athlete, was always, rather fit, trim, through college and everything. And then as the years go on, as all of us golfers know, we tend to get involved with our jobs, we tend to get involved with our kids, and we start to add on a little bit of that padding around the middle. And even though I'm a health professional, fitness professional, I'll say that I have succumbed to the pressures of the fat gods and have fallen into traps before. And just last year, some of you may have read this story on the blog, but I kind of went through a phase where I was like, all right, I'm getting rid of this extra baby weight. We had a kid. We had my little man, Grant, 17 months ago. And prior to that, we were doing a bunch of home renovations. We were living at my in-laws. We were doing all this stuff. And, workouts and everything got away from me. And so I'll be the first to admit that I got a little pudgy around the midsection. And to most people, they wouldn't have noticed. But to me, I could definitely tell. And so I went through a transition where, after learning everything that I have over the past several years about, strength training, fat loss, cardio, all that stuff. Even though I knew what I had to do, I still enlisted a buddy of mine who, just kind of was more of an accountability partner and held me to the fire and kind of helped me with some dietary stuff and, some workouts and ideas and things like that. And so I implemented a few simple techniques and things that really are very basic, but most of us don't do them. And so I wanted to kind of talk about the way that I went from where, and this is a little embarrassing to admit, but I was in the low 20s as far as body fat percentage, which I always tell our clients, we want you between, 12 to 15% is a great goal to shoot for a very fit, healthy male, especially in the age, at my age of 36. So I was in the low 20s. I think it was 21% to be exact. And within 3 months, dropped down to, I believe it was like 11% or 11.2%. Now, there were some drastic measures taken in there, and I don't recommend everything that I did. But, I wanted to do some of this as an experiment, too. But I want to talk to you not necessarily about exactly what I did, but some of the misconceptions that people have about losing fat and some of the things that I hear when they come in the gym that I think, oh, man, if you only, implemented a couple of these things, you could lose the weight so much quicker than, the traditional cutting calories, low-fat diet, that type of stuff. So first thing I want to talk about is cardio. In my 3-month program, I think I did 3, maybe 4 days of cardio total. So everybody out there that thinks you have to get on the treadmill for 45 minutes, you have to do your cardio for an hour a day to burn your fat, not necessarily the case. If any of you listened to episode 4 that we had on the 18 Strong podcast with Dr. Mark Smith, he talked a lot about interval training, high-intensity interval training. And I think that was a great episode, and Mark is one of the greatest resources you can ever find on interval training. So I highly recommend either going back and listening to that episode, again, which I will link up in the show notes of this page, and reading some of Mark's stuff. And he's got a more recent article, I think it's entitled The Jibalas, Gibala, or something to the effect of Jibala intervals instead of Tabata intervals, which I'll link up too because that's a great article. And it just talks about the importance of how you don't have to do your long duration cardio. In fact, you're doing yourself an injustice doing that kind of cardio, especially if you're looking for fat loss, you're looking for power, you're looking for speed. You want to get more into the high intensity training type stuff. And so for me, that was when I did the cardio, the only kind of cardio I did were some sort of sprints. Sprints on a treadmill, sprints on a bike, sprints on a row machine, jump rope, running steps, mixing up in those kinds of ways. And you also hear my buddy Jason Glass talk about one of his most popular podcast episodes on the Coach Glass podcast was Cardio is for Suckers, which is a great title. But he talks about the same thing. The days of 45 minutes to an hour's worth of cardio, and that being the golden ticket to fat loss, is no longer the case. We found better ways. We found more time-efficient ways to do it. So focus more on your high-intensity interval training, which is going to burn more calories. It's going to increase your lung capacity. And if you think, depending on your age, if you think this isn't for you, I definitely reference back to Dr. Mark Smith, who talks about doing sprints and interval training for the elderly population, for those in their 60s, 70s, and I believe maybe even 80s when he talked about a couple of his clients. So just as another quick story, I had a good friend of mine in the gym, and he just this past week, and he's a golf instructor, and he's like, yeah, just swinging by, I want to say, hey, I'm going to go down and get my cardio work done. And I said, well, hold on, before you do your cardio, why don't we just do this? Let's just put you on the bike, one of those old wind bikes, the Airdynes, and I gave him a little sprint protocol, and it was like something, basically 15 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off, something along those lines. I said, just do this little program. It might take you 10 minutes. And let me know if you feel like you got more done in that 10 minutes than you would have in your 30-minute session on your elliptical that you were going to do. And bottom line, he came back to me huffing and puffing afterwards, said it was one of the best workouts he's had in a long time, and basically swore off the long-duration cardio and thanked me because he said, I just saved him a ton of time for his future workouts. So think about it that way. You're going to be more efficient with your cardio. You're going to be more you're going to get more benefits out of what you're doing, especially because golf is not a sport where you need to be walking, where you need your long duration cardio, where you're taxing yourself for long bouts for an hour at a slow pace. It's more you need an explosive move. And then you get to chill out. You get to walk down the fairway. You get to listen to the birds chirp. And then you need to explode again. And then back and forth. And so the high-intensity stuff is much more conducive to what you're going to be doing on the golf course. All right, the second piece in the weight loss or fat loss portion is the idea of actually lifting more weights. In many situations, golfers have been known to again, lean more towards the flexibility side, lean more towards the resistance band training and some of the exercises that look more like golf swing type stuff. When your goal is fat loss, the higher intensity you can train at, you're going to stimulate your body to burn much more fat. So weightlifting and strength training is actually going to kind of kick up your furnace and increase your metabolism for a longer period of time, much like the interval training, than any kind of cardiovascular exercise is going to do. So you getting in the gym and learning how, of course, doing it properly, doing it smart, but learning how to lift a little bit of weight is definitely going to help you increase your fat loss. And again, it's going to save you time because now you don't have to do that cardio. You can get the heart pumping, you can get the stimulation of your metabolism all by just doing your strength training workouts. And then the beauty is, the more you strength train, you're going to increase your body's muscular percentage, or your body fat's going to go down, your lean muscle mass is going to go up, and the more lean muscle mass you have on your body, the more your body burns that fuel, burns that fat, and then the leaner you become. So that's why when somebody ends up getting lean, it's way easier to stay lean. As you start your diet, yes, you might lose a bunch of weight right off the bat because you kind of get rid of that excess water weight. But then it gets harder and it gets harder. And then after a while, though, once you get down into those leaner stages and you get down into the 15, 12%, that range, it's way easier to stay lean if you have a cheat meal here or there. Mind you, at this point, you've already ingrained some good habits as far as what you're eating and what you're putting in your body and how you're working out. But it's a lot easier when you do have those little cheat meals for your body to fight that off, because basically your body is much more efficient at that time. All right, and then lastly, in this fat loss portion, we got to talk about the diet. We got to talk about nutrition. And basically, this is the secret sauce here. This is where it all comes down to it. And if your main goal is fat loss, the lifting weights is great, the high intensity stuff is great, but if you're not honest with yourself and looking at your diet and really making dietary changes, you're never, ever, ever going to get to where you want to go, because the diet is the most important part of this entire equation. And so I'm not going to go into talking about, the different diet systems. There's so many different things out there. You've got paleo, you've got your no sugar, no grains, you've got, the gluten-free, you've got all these different diets. And all of them have some validity to them. And I want you to just think of the moderation approach. And basically, when I say that, let's just look at some of the big problems. And my buddy Michael Monavian on episode 17 of the 18 Strong podcast talked about this stuff very eloquently and talked about some of the biggest things that they find when they're doing their hormonal and dietary testing on their clients, which they do a phenomenal job at looking, basically digging into the nitpicky things of a person's diet and blood levels. But the biggest problems are most people eat too little protein, too little animal protein, but just lean protein in general. Most people don't get enough good fats in their diet. We're talking good fats, we're talking avocado, we're talking some nuts, we're talking things like that, coconut oils, macadamia nut oils, all of those kinds of things, which basically, when we talk fats, the term fat has gotten such a bad reputation over the past, 10, 20 years, but you almost want to think of the word fat and replace that with the word energy, because your body can use fat as energy if it's done properly. So getting some of these good fats into your body can actually be a very helpful and beneficial thing as compared to what we've been taught for the past 20 years. One of the biggest components to our poor diets and the weight gain that most of us have seen is too much processed food. So anything that you're getting in a box, in a can, in a plastic bottle, consider that to be somewhat processed in some way or another. And the more you can get away from the processed foods, and I'm sure you guys have heard all this stuff before, but the more you can get away from the processed foods, and I can't stress it enough, the more you're putting whole foods in your body, and your body is basically just going to be able to operate and process those things so much better. And so that's vegetables, that's chicken, fish, beef, and the higher quality, the better. In many situations, you want to go organic with several things. Not everything, and of course that can break your bank, but there are certain things that you definitely want to go organic in regards to vegetables and different meats, wild fish, that type of stuff. And then lastly, along with these processed foods, so many things in our diet have become grains and starches and basically carbohydrates that we don't need. Now, some people will say you got to get rid of all the carbohydrates, and in many ways, that's what I did in the diet that I went through when I basically dropped a bunch of body fat in 3 months. I got rid of a lot of the carbs, and it really changed my system and the way that I fueled my body. But I'm not telling you to do all that. I'm not telling you to go super hardcore. Just look at all the things that you're eating and get rid of some of those starchy carbs, because our body basically takes that, stores a little bit of it. What it doesn't store, it's going to basically turn into sugar and glucose and put that in our bloodstream and then store it as fat. Bottom line. So whether you're a paleo fan, you're a no sugar, no grains fan, gluten-free, whatever, just take those basic keys and then utilize those. And I find that where the biggest difference is made in all of this is simply in how you prepare yourself to eat. So when you're getting ready for your week, if you don't have an idea of what you're going to eat every day, and you just rely on going out to lunch at, Crazy Bowl and Wraps or Subway or whatever, you're going to succumb to the pressures of lack of good choices. And so unless you're preparing or kind of mentally knowing ahead of time, okay, I'm going to go here and I can kind of special order, or I can get, the dish with just the veggies and the protein. You need to kind of know that stuff ahead of time so you don't put yourself in those bad situations. And so if there's one thing I can stress to you guys in this dietary portion, it's the fact that you just need to prepare yourself. If you can prepare, maybe cook a little extra on a Sunday and get some meals ready for the week, do it, because you're going to put yourself ahead of the game in that situation. All right, I'm going to move on to our third misconception, which is basically how to get in golf shape, how to be fit for golf, hit a ball further and get stronger. And as I mentioned before, we've seen a lot of trend towards, using a lot of exercises that look like golf swings. And as golf fitness becomes this kind of a buzzword that I've really almost kind of grown to despise, because I think that a lot of people think, oh, golf fitness, that's got to look like my golf swing. I'm going to relate this exercise to how I feel as I follow through my, in my swing, or this feels like my backswing, and this is going to help me with the way I rotate my arm and place my hand. All that stuff, frankly, to me is kind of nonsense. And take this from me, because I did all this stuff. I utilized some of these techniques, working on people's swings in the gym, with the cables, doing all this stuff. And what I've learned over the years is that technique and any kind of skill-related stuff for any sport really should be done as close to a sport-like competition as possible. So basically any technique for golf, technique for soccer, technique for different sports is not really meant to be learned in the gym. So for a soccer player, using my background, working on, let's say, free kicks, how to curve a ball or move a ball to hit a certain part of the net so the goalie can't get to it, or to get it around the guys that are in front of the ball. We never worked on any kind of technique, or what angle should my foot be at, or doing an exercise where I'm standing on one foot pretending like I'm kicking a ball. But we do that. We've seen that a ton with golfers, where guys are using a band and swinging it, or heavy clubs and all these different exercises that look like a golf swing. What I want you to think about is that it's not just a bunch of golf exercises that look like a swing that are going to make you a better golfer. Golf's an explosive sport. Golf is a powerful sport. If you're looking to hit a ball further, you need to get stronger and get faster. Your body, your brain are smart enough to take the improved motions and improved power and improved strength that you give it through your exercises and your movements in the gym and relate that into your golf swing. So much like a football player works on power and strength, we need to do that stuff in our golf workouts. Not that we're going to be, benching and deadlifting and doing the things and pushing sleds like a football player is in every one of their workouts, but some of the things that we do in the workout can look like some of the things that the football player does. And I think that wrapping your head around that, the fact that despite what many people want to argue, golfers are athletes, and any sport that requires the physical taxing that golf does is an athletic move. And so we need to be moving heavier things. We need to move fast and explosively in the gym. We need to balance out any weak areas that we find through our evaluations and basically prevent any injuries that may be occurring. And then we need to learn how to properly exhaust our system, our bodies, every now and then in our workouts, because that preps the body for how it can perform when it's fatigued out on the course. Now, of course, you're not going to be, sweating and heaving and everything when you're on the course because you've just sprinted up a hill, but sometimes you can mimic the tension and, just the jitteriness of the body when you get in those stressful. Do that by fatiguing the body and working on some of those energy systems in the gym. So I'm kind of fascinated by all of this stuff, the mental side of the game. Possibly because I didn't really grow up playing the game, and so I realize how hard it is for me to stay focused out there and to perform at my highest level as I'm not going to say a new golfer, but somebody who didn't grow up playing the game. But I also, my undergraduate degree is in psychology, so some of this stuff that the techniques that the brain works and some of the techniques that some of these sports psychologists and some of the better coaches out there use just fascinate me. So we're going to have a lot more of these kind of professionals on the show in the future too, because again, I just love it, and I think that you guys can get some very significant benefit and actionable items out of the interviews that we do with them, just like you did from our episode with Dr. Brett McCabe in the third episode, and that you did with Dr. Ellen Reed. So a couple highlights from their episodes. Dr. McCabe talked a lot about getting rid of your expectations when you're out on the course. We tend to go out there, we either expect to shoot a bad shot, or we expect to maybe have a couple errors in our swings, things like that. But he talks about the importance of kind of clearing your brain of all that stuff. What you have to focus on is the fact that you can trust in yourself and the fact that you put in the time, you put in the effort in your off season, in your workouts, in your practice on the range, and that you are the best possible golfer that you could be at that moment in time. And if you didn't put those workouts in, you didn't put that time in, well, tough shit. That's your problem, because you're the one that put yourself in that situation. And so you have to trust the fact that I did my job, I'm ready to play. No one ever knows what's going to happen out there. Bad bounces happen, good bounces happen, and you're going to have to roll with the punches. In fact, he had a great article recently, I think it was in Golf Magazine, where he talked about Ricky Fowler and Ricky Fowler's mental approach to the game, and how sometimes he goes out there with the mental approach that this is going to be a battle out here. I'm going to have to fight for it, and I'm going to have to work hard. And you know what? I put my time in, I put my effort in, but I'm going to have to grind it out. And that way, if he goes out there and birdies are falling and things are going great, it was easy, no big deal. But if he goes out there and he's kind of looking forward to the battle, then he's ready for it. And I think that's a fantastic mindset to go into. Dr. Ellen Reed, she talked about being prepared for when things go wrong out on the course. Have your performance statement in your head, utilize it all the time so you don't let those negative thoughts creep in. You kind of take a preemptive strike, as George Costanza would say, where you're telling yourself, I'm going to make this putt, or you've got these certain things that you're going through in your brain on every shot that you make or every putt that you make, so you don't let those negative thoughts creep in. And then she also talks about the importance of visualizing. And she gave 3 tips as far as visualizing, and those were to visualize in the first person, as if you're living the moment, not as if you're away from it looking at a mirror, but as if you're actually performing it as it's going. The second is to make it as detailed as possible when you're visualizing this scenario. And then lastly, visualize it in real time. Don't visualize it in slow motion. Don't visualize it as in super speed. Visualize it as it would happen in real time, to basically, again, to make it as real as possible. And then I think in both episodes we discussed the importance of breathing, and not necessarily just breathing for the ability to calm down, which is what we talked about with Dr. Ellen Reed, definitely. But in our episode with Brian Bradley, we talked a lot about how your breathing physically can change what's going on in your body and how prepared you are and how your posture is and all that stuff. So the breathing is very important for both the physical and the mental side. And then the last topic that I want to cover, and I'm going to cover it very briefly because in the next show or two, depending on when we have this interview scheduled, I have an expert coming on by the name of Sean Stevenson from the Model Health Show, which was the #1 podcast in iTunes in the health and fitness, I think the health and fitness category. But Sean Stevenson wrote the book on sleep, basically. It's called Sleep Smarter. But the topic I want to talk about is recovery and how important recovery is for both your performance on the course, but also in the gym. And Sean's going to come on. He's going to talk about how basically your sleep really dictates how well you do everything in life and how well your body works. And, if you want to be on your game and at your highest level of performance, Sean talks about how to do that through, some tips and tactics and basically better ways of getting great sleep and what the real important things are to focus on versus, some of the myths and things that we've heard. So look forward to that episode. That should be in the next 1 or 2 episodes. I can't wait to talk to him. Great guy. Got to see him speak a couple weeks ago. But basically, your sleep and your recovery really play a big part in how your muscles recover from any kind of activity, physical exertion. Your recovery affects your weight loss and your ability to lose fat, burn fat. It helps with your brain function, how you think, how you act, and then also, as Michael Manavian talked a lot about, just what your hormones are doing. And again, Sean's kind of an expert in that stuff too, and he's going to talk about that. But recovery is a very under-talked about topic, and that's one of the things that we have to talk to our clients about a lot in the gym is sometimes slowing them down in between their exercises, slowing them down in between their workouts, taking a day off here or there. Some people, they go balls to the wall 7 days a week. They want to strength train. They want to do their cardio. They want to go to their CrossFit gym. They want to go do their cardio kickboxing class, all this stuff. And sometimes if you slow them down, teach them to eat right, teach them to sleep better, teach them to have less stress in their life, then they end up having a much more productive day. They have much more productive workouts, and their body actually recovers and is able to get the benefits out of what they're doing. I recently heard somebody say that your body is not getting better when you're in the gym or when you're practicing. Your body is getting better when you're sleeping and recovering. You're breaking yourself down when you go to the gym. You're breaking yourself down when you're out there banging balls on the range. It's when you're eating, when you're resting, when you're sleeping, that your body's repairing itself and improving from those damages that you did. That's when you're getting smarter. When you sleep, your short-term memory becomes your long-term memory. All these wonderful things happen during your recovery. And so we've got to kind of look at what do our workouts look like. The craze these days is a lot of high intensity, heavy weight, high rep, go as hard as you can for 10 minutes, workouts of the day, that kind of stuff. But not always the most effective depending on what your goals are. If you're looking to really get stronger, really get faster, get more explosive, get more powerful, you've got to incorporate your rest. And that's in between your sets, that's in between your workouts, all that stuff. So that's just my soapbox, my rant, some of the lessons that I have learned, and hopefully, some of the misconceptions that you guys have heard. I wanted to maybe clear up a few things. If you guys have any questions, by all means, please let me know. I'm sure there's tons of stuff that I forgot and wanted to touch on. But basically, wanted to put that stuff out there and start some conversations. Let me know what are some of the other misconceptions that you guys have had or questions that you have, or what are some of the biggest mistakes that you guys see, either that you have gotten over or that you see people making in the gym, you see trainers making in the gym. I think that's always incredible. But I want to hear about all of it. So please let me know at Jeff Pellizzero on Twitter, 18 Strong on Facebook. Go to 18strong.com, leave comments in the section below of this podcast episode. Again, this is episode number 20. So I want to thank you guys again. Don't forget to pick up your free ebook at 18strong.com/5yardsbook. Or as I said, when you just go to 18strong.com, look in the top right-hand corner. You'll see the image for the free book. Just click on that, put in your information, and you'll get the immediate download for that book. And you'll be able to read through it. It's nothing real long. It's pretty quick and dirty, and you'll be able to start doing the activities and exercises literally within 10 minutes or so. So by all means, go to that. And I want to hear what big things you guys have planned for your big golf year of 2015. So let me know, again, on Twitter at Jeff Pellizzero, and throw in the hashtag 18Strong 2015. We'll go ahead and use that, and hopefully we'll get some people letting us know, what are their big plans, what are the things happening in their world, their golf world for 2015. So thank you guys, as always, for listening, for your feedback. Love you guys. And don't forget, train hard, practice smart, play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.